Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. Today we got our weekly notes here. I'm going to be calling these our notes, where we kind of note what's going on and what we're looking at going into this week. There's a few things that I definitely want you guys to note, so definitely keep an eye out on some of the things that I have to say. So obviously tomorrow is May 25th, which is Memorial Day. So tomorrow is a bank holiday, which means the markets will be closing early, which means I don't really expect much action to happen at all. So going into this week, Monday should be a no trade day for everybody. None of you should be taking bank holiday trades, right? Looking at the news for the rest of the week, we do have Thursday, 8:30. We have two deliveries happening there, and then that's pretty much all we got for the week. So what that's telling me is that it's going to be a very price action oriented week instead of maybe necessarily time. Of course, time is still important, but the news is usually what we use as targets or where we use as times where we expect certain things to happen. But with a lack of news, definitely means we're going to be looking more on the lower time frames and looking more at just kind of what the previous session has done, ranges, as opposed to just like forecasts, I guess you could say. So going into the charts here, I marked out two main things. The first is this new week opening gap right here. So as you can see from Friday's close up until Sunday's open, we had a pretty substantial, actually, this is a pretty big gap. This is about 150, almost 150 points, which is pretty big for an opening gap. This week, I would definitely expect us to move lower. So I would say bias should be bearish above the new week opening gap to an extent. Of course, if we are moving way too fast, then you can avoid it. But generally speaking, you do want these new week opening gaps to be filled relatively quickly. If not Monday, certainly Tuesday, we would want to see us move lower. I also marked out a few lows here, specifically these three lows and this daily fair value gap here. Typically, what I would want to see is during the manipulation leg of the week, whether that's Tuesday or whether that's another day, maybe it's Wednesday. You usually want to see us come into some sort of sell side liquidity and also bounce off a higher time frame PD array, which I marked out here, the daily fair value gap. If we zoom in here, oops, sorry. If we zoom in here, so you can see right up between these three candles, beautiful. Bit of a smaller one, but still a fair value gap that I would consider interesting enough to look at. It would also be ideal if we could form some form of sequential SMT at these lows. I'm not sure if it's these lows. We do also have relative equal lows here that we could definitely draw into, but generally speaking, I wouldn't want us to move too much lower. We could move lower than here, but I wouldn't want to move lower than this low here from Tuesday, May 19th, as that'll kind of, for me personally, kind of switch my bias more to bearish. Now, I will admit, I'm not the best when it comes to using standard deviation projections, so I'm not quite sure if this is the right way to do it, but I would measure it like this, using the manipulation leg from the low of the range that we're working with. That puts us pretty comfortably in between the 2 to 2.5 range. So do with that what you will. I would just say I'm not the best at using these, but I would definitely lean more towards shorts until this gap gets filled, until our manipulation leg is done, and then we can go long after all that. Taking a look at ES here, we kind of have a very similar story. Again, I drew out the new week opening gap. If we go down to the 1 hour time frame, as you can see, new week opening gap, all these lows, relative equal lows here, and a daily fair value gap. Again, ideally, I wouldn't want us to move too much short, but one thing that I definitely think that sticks out to me on ES is these lows right here from Tuesday. When we went to NQ, we looked at NASDAQ, it was a very prominent, just 1 wick lower, whereas on ES, as you can see, there's a lot of stacked lows, which to me is not ideal. We definitely don't like having too many stacked lows like this whenever we want to go long. However, I definitely think we can make an exception considering we're on all-time high conditions, which means we'll typically leave things like this kind of alone for a little while. One thing I definitely wanted to note is that we could also use OTE to kind of maybe pick out some areas where we might want to see price tap into. As you can see, discount is just below the fair value gap here and right alongside these relative equal lows. So again, I'm not a big OTE guy. I don't personally use OTE much, but it could lend some credence to these lows here. For me, the only thing that I would like to look is for sure filling this new week opening gap, sweeping the lows, tap into this daily. After that, I don't want to say too much about what else I'd want to see. I definitely want to see some sort of, again, sequential SMT, and most importantly is displacement. Once we get, my idea is pretty much this. We're going to chop around on Monday, right? Because Monday's a holiday. We're going to, boom, have a really short day. Monday's not going to do anything. Tuesday, I would love for us to move lower and tap into this daily fair value gap, ideally. Make a little bit of a low, sweep internal liquidity, blah, blah, blah. And then the way I know that I'm ready to go long is once we form the inverse fair value gap here, it aligns with our right time of day. Okay, it can't just be in the middle of the night. It has to be the right time of day. And then after that, we get some sort of either breaker or an inversion, something that's telling me that we're ready to continue higher. I would love for us to make some sort of buy model on the lower timeframes. To me, that is an A plus setup. That would be very, very high probability setup right there. But again, this is just notes. These are things that I'm taking note of. So keep everything I say with a grain of salt. We could move much lower. We could again attack these lows, potentially even these lows, even though I don't think so. I don't believe it will go into those lows. We definitely could. And I could, again, we're waiting to see what happens. This is just my notes. Finally, we're taking a look at the Dow Jones. And now the Dow Jones is a very interesting case. I would definitely pay high attention to what the Dow Jones is doing. Now we're looking at the Dow Jones here. As you can see, this looks a lot different, so please pay attention. This is definitely going to have some important stuff. First things first, the lows that we're looking at do look vastly different. As you can see, it is much more obvious that we have our accumulation, manipulation, distribution, right? Accumulation, manipulation, distribution, right? So it's a very, very clean, if you ask me personally, it looks much cleaner than ES and NQ do. So these are the two things that I keep in mind. Again, the same daily fair value gap is firstly a lot bigger. This is a lot wider of a fair value gap. It's really nice to see, nice and clean, looks good. The same lows again, we have the same 3 lows that we're looking at, all still there. But I'm also paying attention to this low and this hourly fair value gap, which went untapped. It did not get tapped into. I'm not saying that we're going to move this low, but I would definitely pay attention to how we react off this fair value gap as well, the daily along with this hourly one. We can transform this one as well, this hourly fair value gap. I think all of these will some of these will play a huge role. I definitely think a lot of these are going to play some sort of role going into next week. Again, we want to see manipulation legs. We want to see slightly different things between NQ, ES, and the Dow Jones. And I think the Dow Jones is prime for some divergences between the three. ES and NQ, if you ask me, if we can take a look at those again, look very, very similar. So it's unlikely to me that we're going to see very many divergences between just those two. But definitely the Dow Jones, again, if we look at it one more time, just looks completely different, much cleaner, much better in my opinion. So we should definitely expect some sort of move lower on all 3 indices, of course, but definitely I want to keep an eye out for what the Dow Jones is doing. Maybe it takes this low, form a sequential SMT there, or perhaps tap into this fair value gap, form something just slightly so different from the other 2 indices that kind of tell me that we're ready to move higher. I definitely want to see some sort of manipulation leg lower. I don't like the idea of us just kind of shooting up from here and just going straight for it. Of course, the market could always do that, and if it does, we'll have to adjust. But I like this idea of tapping into or filling out the new week opening gap, maybe sweeping some lows, daily fair value gap, etc., etc. And of course, I'm looking out for those things on certain days of the week. And again, we have to see what Monday and Tuesday do. For sure, after those 2 days, I'll have a much more solid opinion on what I'm going to do for Wednesday and Thursday. But that's all for today. These are some of the notes I want to take. Hopefully you guys have a good rest of your week. I will be streaming on Monday, but I will not be trading Monday because it's a bank holiday. So I'll kind of look at it, see what we're doing, whether we're accumulating or if we're going to have a continuation move, whatever Monday ends up doing. And then from there, I will decide what we're going to do on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'll see you guys then. Have a good rest of your weekend.